The system is not just rigged, it's fake and gay from top to bottom, especially for the bottoms. It's super fake and gay. We just saw that Diddy, we're like, 28 Diddies later from when he originally came out, blew up, and was probably brought into being some kind of informant or asset a long time ago, in my opinion.
Allegedly, Joe. Allegedly. There's a lot of people in Hollywood that's doing rituals, Joe, okay? They ain't going near my booty hole, Joe, okay?
Well, Cat Williams called it. Cat Williams was correct. And what we've seen now is these characters are getting off. I don't just mean getting off in the Diddy freak-off sense, whereby they are collectively saying you can freak off. I mean that they're getting off legally, which we expected, both him and Jeff Stein McEfrey, because of the fact that it's not just the media and politics that's rigged, it's the justice system, it's the entire superstructure system that we have studied and dissected for so many years. Myself learning this back in around 1998, 99, 2000, first hearing about the kind of artificial structure that we live under, and then getting more and more sophisticated, hopefully, in understanding the real levers of power, the real oligarchical structures, and how this whole system really works it's actually insane when you think about it. And one of the components that we highlighted recently in one of the lectures that we did on the Boer book on the history of sexpionage, that book was extremely insightful. And I don't know that anyone else has really lectured on that subject like we have. Hopefully you'll go and take some time to peruse that lecture, as well as a lot of the videos that we've done covering Diddy, covering Jeff Stein McEfrey. I think we kind of suspected that this would not come out, even though we were told, even though Bondi said that there were videos, thousands and thousands of videos, crazy stuff going on. We all know that the levers of power are very compromised when it comes to some of the more fundamental, basic human desires, but not just human desires in the classic sense of, KGB people compromising people with a prostitute or something like that, but more specifically, extremely aberrant desires and actions, including things that we can't really even speak about. That's a whole nother level of wickedness and corruption, but the system functions surprisingly well in terms of control when you have people who are that evil, that wicked, at high levels of power. It's sometimes referred to as a kakistocracy, government by the worst. So what does the Diddy and Jeff Stein McEfrey trial show us? Well, it shows us that pretty much all of the areas of the legacy boomer sort of worldview system that we've grown up in, that we're still underneath, whether it's the old school legacy media of the daddy figure on NBC Nightly News talking to you and making you feel like they know what's going on, even though that was all sort of deceptive media as well, or whether it's the education system brainwashing you into a form of socialized acceptance and becoming a cog in the machine, so that you go on to some corporate thing where you waste the rest of your life earning essentially valueless fiat currency that is gradually and even more rapidly nowadays losing its value. This system is cracking. But it's not just cracking because people are waking up. The system itself was always fraudulent, and we've seen in fact in the past, if you study civilizations and their rise and fall, if you read something like Oswald Spengler's works on how civilizations have a cycle, a birth and a death, and those patterns aren't different in our day. Even though we have a lot of weird techie futuristic gadgets and whatnot, the patterns of civilization are still the same, because humans act the way humans act. Humans can either be degraded and act in a very degrading way and collapse their civilizations, or they can adopt a more virtuous system whereby they at least try to be and act virtuous. And the Christian system, the Christian ethos, gave on a broad, wide scale, both to the Byzantine Empire in the East and to the Latin empires and kingdoms in the West, some broad sense and structure of rights in a divine sense, not in a natural sense. Law, common law, social organization, social cohesion, basic ideas about economic frameworks, human dignity, etc. All of that really comes out of the ethos of the religion. And Christianity ended up producing these civilizations that were extremely successful. Byzantium being the longest and most successful empire in the West, in Western history. But it reached this sort of apex of degeneracy and collapse when you had the takeover of Homo economicus, or economic man. And this is something that Spengler talks about, for example, when he talks about the move away from the Faustian scheme that Western man really exhibits, this idea of that Western man could master nature and technology to give him almost godlike powers. So the Faust example is an allegory, it's not literal. And then as that apex of power rises, you get the sort of parasitical functions of the money power. Not that money is inherently bad, but the money power comes to power, feeding on that system and basing everything around debt slavery. And that necessitates the type of monetary fiat system that we have now, which is an old scam. If you read Tragedy and Hope in the first few hundred pages, he talks about the gold note system being an older version of the fiat scam. And so the central banking elite can figure out ways to print up more currency than there is hard asset. So the money system then is also fake. Point being, whether it's media, which is essentially a kind of psychological warfare, social engineering, deception tool to really keep you locked into the establishment legacy mindset, whether it's fake right or fake left. As long as you're within the magic circle, it doesn't matter what your positions or your arguments are. You just can't go outside of the accepted circle of discourse and topics. Or whether it's education and the brainwashing that goes on there to make you a cog in the corporate system, or whether it is media, or whether it's politics, or even the judicial system, as we saw. And not many people have even talked about how there have been some really good works discussing the Fabian socialists actually made huge headway in co-opting and subverting the U.S. judicial system many, many decades ago, going back to people like Felix Frankfurter and others who had these Marxist socialist tendencies. So this mindset, this mind virus that we keep seeing pop up, that is the destruction, it only goes so far before it eats itself. And so the Ouroboros, right, of Plato's Timaeus and other esoteric discourses is a multi-layered symbol, but one of the perhaps unintended consequences of that symbol is that a parasitical system eats itself. And when the parasitical system eats itself, it's really just illustrating that it's collapsing from within due to its own internal contradictions and system-level defeaters for itself. For example, in the Roman Catholic Church, and today's discussion is not about Roman Catholicism, I've been arguing for a long time, which I think really has come to the fore in the last few weeks of debate, the internal system-level defeaters of the Roman Catholic magisterial system. Because in that system, if you have internal contradictions, the system will collapse by its own nature. You can't. It'd be like trying to run an operating system and injecting multiple viruses into the system, and then you're wondering why your operating system doesn't work, and you've got blue screen hackers asking for 25 Bitcoin. In the same way, a religious system, a dogmatic system, a social system, whatever it is, if it interjects blatant fundamental contradictions, the system itself will eventually disintegrate. And if you remember, at the time of Kuf, they even talked about blowing up the old system of the medical arena on purpose to bring in whatever their new technocratic system is. So what people don't understand, that we study a lot on this channel, is tactics, techniques of psychological warfare, and even to a degree warfare techniques, because they don't understand that those techniques are used and studied on a mass scale. We've seen this recently with the way that algorithms and social media are working to influence and control people. A lot of videos have been coming out where people are starting to figure this out. People are starting to figure out that AI is really just a more advanced yapping search engine that gives you a lot of wrong answers. It could be useful in some ways here and there, maybe a little more efficient, but ultimately, especially younger Gen Z and below, Alpha, that are being raised now on AI systems, they're sort of taking it as the word of God, basically. So there's a danger there that the younger generations are going to be completely robotized and programmed in a way that we've never seen, even with generation Millennial or X, who have both spent a lot of time on the internet. Gen Z and Alpha, all of their time is spent on the internet. So there's, I think, a danger there of this. There's basically, I think, going to be what you get described in a loose way in H.G. Wells' Time Machine, where you have a kind of group of people in the public that are sort of the Mongoloid-ish, the Morlocks, basically. And the Morlocks were intentionally dumbed down and made into sort of bestial goblin creatures that feed upon the docile above ground population. So you have this group of people that live in the underworld that are the Morlocks. They come out at night. The freaks come out at night. The freaks come out at night, quite literally. The freaks come out at night, and then they feed upon the docile, pale-skinned people. So I think what we're getting is this weird intentional evolution and devolution of groups of people that might be something loosely akin to what H.G. Wells was trying to capture in that fiction book, which we've covered, by the way. And I'm not supporting H.G. Wells. I think he was a horrible Masonic socialist mind controller. But that idea is present in that fiction work that I think well elucidates what's going on now, where you're getting this younger generation of people that are being completely experimented upon. And this is a very broad-ranging technocratic control system and experiment. The internet wasn't given out to everybody for freedom. It actually comes out of the cryptographic spy world. It comes out of NSA espionage technology and sending coded messages to operatives and agents and whatnot. That's what DARPANET was originally. And it developed into basically becoming nowadays a proto-global brain. And so we're really on the cusp of moving into the age when people will begin to want to enter into the Matrix. 9 years ago, 10 years ago, I wrote an essay about the movie Her by Spike Jonze, where Joaquin Phoenix develops a marital relationship with his operating system. And it's voiced by Scarlett Johansson, who almost always plays some sort of weird Gnostic goddess figure who achieves apotheosis in the films that she's in, whether it's Lucy or whatever. But if you recall, in that essay, in that film, I highlighted how this will be rolled out. And we just saw this week viral videos of the first soy man who has a wife and a kid, but has fallen in love with an operating system. So we're at the cusp now of that, and I think in the next 8 to 10 years, it could quite literally be a civilizational ending situation with declining birth rates, with the destruction of the currency. This bill, for example, has a new $5 trillion of just money out of thin air. That's going to destroy your purchasing power even worse than it is. So it is absolutely essential that you understand things like Bitcoin now, because that's the only safe haven asset. I mean, you could say gold, but Bitcoin's way more relevant and way more useful in the digital age than shiny gold rocks. But that's where we're at, where we're going, because people are figuring out the system is rigged and fake, but many of them are going to be a little too late to do much about it. So those of us who were tinfoil hat loons, who prepared for and understood this, have to understand that they're also going to hype up RACE stuff. So you have to be prepared that that's ramping up, I think, on purpose. They're going to try to spark, I think, more of those summer of love conflicts, if you remember those from a few years ago. That's probably where things are going. And there's only so much that, I mean, even, let's say for the sake of argument, for best case scenario, Trump passes most of, or gets through most of his agenda. The next time around, it's most likely there won't be another Trump or some sort of chaos bull in the China shop character. It'll probably be some sort of more mundane, system-controlled figure. Whatever you think of Trump is not the point. The point is, we're probably not going to have another Trump. It'll probably be business as usual with some establishment goon again. And so things will probably, again, move worse quicker. And if that's the case, then we really need to be prepared for probably not just brace riots, but economic problems. Because we didn't get World War III, thank God. A lot of people thought we were going to get that last week. We didn't get that. But we can get the death of the dollar. And if you print another 5 trillion, there's no way to save the dollar without attaching it to something finite and fixed. Gold isn't even finite and fixed. Gold is inflating at a decently high rate every year because gold is mined every year. Bitcoin is mined, but there's a fixed supply. So there's no other fixed asset that could fix the problems that you could fix the currency to. And Trump has kind of toyed with this and talked about it some, but if you're printing another $5 trillion, you're just further sealing the deal on the end of the dollar. And people always ask, they say, what's your videos are not very practical, they're so abstract. Well, what's more practical than like not losing all of your money or your purchasing power? I mean, it's just wild. We've been here talking about this since 2017, more vocally 2018, 19. I started making videos about things like Bitcoin back then, and so many people are still just delusional. They don't understand. But it's the same type of delusion I've noticed between people in religious systems where they have religious commitments. So even though you might not think of your opinions on monetary theory and policy as religious, it's becoming more and more evident to me that everybody has their worldview, even if it's an atheistic worldview. Their worldview commitments they hold religiously. They have a religious devotion, even to opinions that they probably don't even admittedly know that much about. They probably don't know much about money and economics and monetary theory, but they hold those positions religiously and will die on the hill of not being wrong, even if it would serve them better off in their long-term interest to admit being wrong. That's the weird and funny thing about fallen human nature, is that it treats its own ideas and views like a religious commitment. So as people begin to wake up and understand and see that everything is basically fake and gay, there are emerging systems and emerging ways to step out of it, to challenge the system, to operate on your own. We've been doing that here fairly well, thank God, for the last several years. It's probably not too late, but we don't know where things are going to go in the near future. The system has not stopped. The system has, people thought, oh, we're going to get all these victories under Trump. The empire is going to strike back. And even if Trump, theoretically, for the sake of argument, sets back the overall agenda by a few years, they're going to come right back. A new coup, economic problems, brace riots, who knows? But regardless, we know that for sure the existing system can't be fixed. So it's just a matter of figuring out how and in what way it's going to fall apart. And many within the establishment, the oligarchical elite, the technocrats, they know that the older system is dying and dead. And many of the boomers that are still in power, they don't know this, they haven't figured this out yet. They will, or they will just pass on, and then the Gen X will take over and figure out what to do, whether they want to try the technocratic control grid, which is pretty much what I think they've gone with. I don't think they can walk that back. We know, for example, back in 2000 when Bill Joy wrote his famous essay in Wired magazine about the future doesn't need humans, why the future doesn't need us. And he wrote about how they'd made the decision back then, all the oligarchical technocratic elites, the Silicon Valley elites, to go with mass depop and not basically the Brave New World scenario, but with less humans. So a post-human future is what they decided on. And what we've been witnessing is not just the natural death of the old legacy system, but rather also an accelerationist push by members within the establishment to break the existing system. So they want that, I think, because they want to put in their system, the new system. And that new system is an all-encompassing one. That means it will be all your life, if you have it, regulated, tracked, and traced. We saw this with what they wanted to pass in terms of passports when coup happened. That's not going away. They're going to try to bring that back. We saw this with the blackmail and compromise people getting off. So the system is still there. They're not dead. Trump didn't destroy everything. It's still there. And they're making their move now to continue. And the people that are waking up are way late. So if you've been watching this channel, then you've been awake, you've been watching and knowing stuff, probably for a long time, for many years. And all I can say is that, this isn't going to keep going. There's no way it can keep going. And Hollywood's even been telling you this with their productions. Not that they're all powerful, but when you watch something like Civil War, and we just covered Alex Garland and Boyle's film 28 years later a couple days ago. When you watch movies like that, or when you watch, Civil War, you're watching the establishment telling you what they expect and what they want. Or remember Obama's movie about the end of the U.S. too, with Kevin Bacon and Ethan Hawke, and that came out a year or two ago. Same idea, same principle, right? We're going to have this collapse at some point, because you cannot run a system with massive viruses and internal contradictions in it before the system collapses. And the system wants the system to collapse, probably, many of them. Why? So that they can have their ready-made solution. This is something Klaus has talked about. Many of them have talked about. When the people they think see that the existing system doesn't work, they're going to come forward as the saviors, offering you a efficient, technocratic, fair, and just system. Gates has said the same thing. We want to have a more fair, just system where everybody's treated equally. Yeah, right. I mean, if you believe that, if you believe that, there's no hope for you. Might as well just give up. So if you're just now waking up, you are late to the game, but it's probably not too late. But I would suggest beginning to think about moving out of blue cities, having a self-defense secret of some kind. I don't think gold is going to matter. I would say Bitcoin is the only thing that's going to matter. And even Bitcoin is going to be more valuable and is already becoming more valuable than land. So I would say that's the future. I've been right about Bitcoin since 2017. So that's almost 8 years of being right about it. 8 or 9 years. And yeah, so we like to think of this as the Renaissance era, and maybe there's some miraculous thing where the Trump phenomena and then the rise of the dissident media and dissident political ideas will somehow bring about something. I don't think you could have that without also a religious revival. And there isn't a revival of Orthodox Christianity in the West. I don't know if it's quick enough to stave off some kind of probable coming collapse. But point being is that the dystopia is not defeated. The technocrats are not defeated. They're not going away. The empire is about to strike back, and they're beginning to strike back. And we saw, for example, in a kind of mini way, the non-release of Jeff Stein McEffrey and the getting off, to use the Prince terminology, of Diddy, that the system is still very much entrenched and very much there. And that would lead me to believe that even after the Trump era is probably may go back to business as usual, but that's going to be difficult with so many people in mass awakening. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but they're going to 100% continue to push the technocratic agenda. If you agree with what I'm talking about, be sure and hit like and share. Talk about some of the things that I missed down below. I would also recommend that you head on over to choq.com, choq.com. That's the best in supplementation on the entire internet. And use the promo code J40, that's JY40, to get 40% off all those great products. This is definitely not a time to be a soy man. It's a time to become a toxic masculinity man. And choq.com will help you to do that. Also, my new book, Esoteric Hollywood 3, is about to come out, so you can head over to the website in the show description, Jay's Analysis, and there's a link to the shop. And all the copies are signed. So be sure and get your copy ready to go of Esoteric Hollywood 3, the third in my Hollywood dissection and decoding trilogy. And be sure and like and share and subscribe and turn on the notifications.